Hello there, good people. It's Johny-J here, and welcome to another episode of the 3C Show. And as always, I am super excited to be here. And for some reason, the intro music is playing again. So that is really, really weird. Still getting used to my setup here. And what it is, I've got the video playing somewhere. So let me fix that. There we go. That was really weird. It was like, I was checking the video, sharing the link, and it was playing again. So there you go. Well, welcome everybody. Say hello if you're out there. I'd love to hear from you. I just thought, considering we are starting our new photo exercise for April 2022 already, I thought I'd just jump on and run through and go through a few ideas about minimal photography. That's going to be the photo exercise for the community. By the way, if you're not part of our 3C online photography community, here's the link. Go over to there, 3colors.co/join. It's free to join. Jump in there. What you're going to find is a group of like-minded photographers that you can share your photo journey with. It's just there to encourage you, to support you, to help you through. And also, I am in there all week, all the time, 24/7, answering questions and helping people as well. But you'll find it's a lovely, lovely, supportive group. And we've got Terry out here. Welcome, Terry. Terry's here. Let me put that up. Big hello. Welcome. Welcome, Jim. And there's a few other people here, so it's great to have you. All right. So what I do, I just the reason why minimal photography, I wanted to cover that first. Why minimal photography is a really great genre of photography to get your head around. Okay, and the reason is because when we're out there composing our photographs, often, particularly this happens with wide-angle photography, and that's been, we just recently did that as an assignment for our Team 3CX members, and it's that wide-angle lens includes so many things in your composition that sometimes you can be overwhelmed by exactly what to include and what to exclude in your photograph to tell the story that you're trying to tell. So I think this is where minimal photography can come in, because what it does, it forces you to just think about your main subject, think about any supporting elements that you need in your composition, and just include those things in the frame. So I think while we're out there, doing this photo exercise for the month of April, I think this is really going to help develop those composition rules or those composition values that can make you create other photographs, make you create strong compositions in other photographs. If I'm stumbling a bit in my words, it's because I'm drinking coffee here. So good morning. It's probably afternoon for a lot of people, but good morning where I am. Yes. All right. So let's just jump over to our screen. I think we've got a few people out there viewing. It was a bit of a last minute stream, and I think I'm going to be doing more of these. So if you're not part of the community, please jump in again. There's that URL, 3colors.co/join. But let me share my screen now, and we'll jump over there. And we've got little Johnny down here. Hello. So while I don't use 500 pics, I find it a great resource to get inspiration. So if you haven't used it, I don't know, there's just something about it. There's less clutter. It's really, really nice. So anyway, look, to start off, I wanted to just go through and just show, a few ideas of these different photographs. You can see when I type in minimal into 500 pics, you can see the sort of things I get. Often people will think minimal photography has to be, and let me just find something like this. This shot like a bird here, okay? So you can see there's nothing else included in this except the action, the bird, and what it's standing on. And you can even see the background is, yeah, welcome Terry, it's great to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You can see there's not much going on in the frame, and I would class this as a minimal photograph. And often when you hear the term minimal photography or minimal photograph, I'll just bring up my little tool here, you'll think of this area around here outside of your subject, okay, which is what's called negative space, all right? And particularly when you've got really shallow depth of field like this area at the back, or this bokeh area, is actually just important as the main subject. So one way to create minimal photographs is using a technique like this, where you've created negative space, but you've also created this shallow depth of field, okay? So, and the reason why the negative space back here is just as important as your main subject. It's because, you can imagine if I had an ugly big telegraph pole sticking through the scene here or something like that, it's just going to intersect my bird, even though it's blurred out, it's in the background. It's still going to be a distracting element in my frame, I would call it, distracting element. So you can see a shot like this, bird, shallow depth of field. That's one way with negative space, is one way to create a minimal photograph, okay? All right, let's have a look. We've got a couple of others here. I'll just get my tool off here. And this is another way I would say to create a minimal photograph, okay? Some people would call this, maybe a repeating pattern or, repeating pattern or a broken pattern. But, you can see what's happened here. The photographer has filled the frame with the subject. And I would call this, a minimal photograph. There's nothing else in this photograph except the main subject, which is this plant. And you could argue that maybe it's a repeating subject of all these ends of the plant here where the different colors are. And of course, the colors between the pink and the green are really, they work together really, really nicely. But this is another way, I think, to minimize your composition. And obviously what they've done here, they've either used a macro or they've used a telephoto lens, and they've really zoomed in on the subject and filled the frame. So I would say this is another example of a minimal photograph because they've included nothing else. To me, they've included nothing else in the frame. And I think, often when we think of minimal photography, we think about that first photograph that I showed of the bird, where it's a single subject, okay, and it's got negative space or it's got, bokeh area in the background. But to me, this is still part of minimal photography, is things like this, repeating patterns, just where your subject is super simplified, I think is really important. All right, I just realized I had an overlay down the bottom there as well. All right, so we come out of this one. Let's have a look and see what else I found here. Oh, this is a nice one. Okay. So another way to create minimal photographs is use something like fog or mood or, a wash of light, if it's just bright yellow, and you've shot with a telephoto lens into a landscape and picked out a single subject. That's another way to do it. But I thought this was a good example because, basically we've just got this leading line of the jetty, then we've got all this negative space. So, and the water, and look, some of this may have been Photoshopped to make it white, and that's fine. But, if this was a big foggy area and there wasn't much detail back there, and all we had as our main subject was obviously this jetty or bridge or whatever it is as a massive leading line. So this is another example of a minimal photograph because there's really nothing else included in the frame. While I think, it would have been nice maybe to have a few more reflections or, some cloud, just a little bit more in the frame, I would still class this as a minimal photograph, because there's really not anything to it. It's really simple, and what the subject is, where the eye is going to settle, because there's not much else to it. That's what's so great excuse me, about minimal photographs is, you're just simplifying your compositions to the rawest thing in the frame. It's almost like the main subject that's it, and there's no other way to get distracted by anything else because it's really, really obvious what the main subject is. Okay, yeah. All right, let's see what else I found here. Oh, that's a really good question. Would you consider the use of black and white as a method to reinforce minimal photography? Yeah, totally. Excuse me. Yeah, no, I totally would. And the reason being is just like you probably already considered there, buddy, is that it's stripping away the color. So you're taking away something that may be distracting, may not be distracting, and taking a photograph back to its rawest elements, which is luminosity, lights and darks, and texture. So I totally agree. Using black and white would be a great method. And we'll have a look up here in a minute. I think it might be even the next one, buddy. Up here, let's go to this one. And this is, whether they've made this black and white, which it looks like they have actually. It's funny, it was the next photograph we were talking about. So I'll just turn off that comment there. Let's bring this one up. And you can see this one. So yeah, exactly what you said again, but we've got a foggy day here. all we've got is a leading line and our tree, which you could argue is the main subject here, and the leading line is just supporting that. But then we've got all this white and negative space at the top, and it's definitely a grayscale image. And I think if this photograph was, say, the road was, it was black, which it probably is, but the trees were maybe a bit yellow, or they were a bit, the color brown, and it wasn't so pleasing, then I would say, that this wouldn't be as pleasing as what it could be in black and white. So to your point is, by stripping away that possible color that could have been in this tree, obviously this was probably dark here, but there's a chance that this mud down here wasn't a very nice, pleasing color, okay? And it might have been a browny color or something that wasn't pleasing, mixed with this beautiful, pure white. Then stripping away that color has just created those grays and those blacks and the pure white in this frame. And I think that's made it more a minimal photograph. So yeah, really good point about the black and white for sure. It's got another question here. Question from Terry. Is it better to have two basic colors to simplify the photograph? Yeah, totally. So in general, when we talk about, I don't have a color wheel up, but I posted in the community. In general, when we talk about, complementary colors, they're colors on the color wheel that are opposite to each other. And in any composition, it's always great to have those two colors. Often, in nature, it's blue and yellow you get quite often. But yeah, it's definitely great to simplify your scene into less color. There's no doubt about it. And often what you can do to simplify your scene even more is have, say you had a green moss on the ground. It was luminous green, because you're in a rainforest or something like that. And then you found a nice orange leaf to put on top. Having those two colors offset each other means that you can totally tell what the main subject is, because you've got that green luminosity, the green moss, and then you've got that orange leaf on top, and that's really going to define what your main subject is. So using colors together definitely can simplify, understanding that if we threw a person in there with a big red jacket, or even this scene, right? So even if this was in color and we had a person down the back here in a big red jacket on the road, that is going to pull your eye away from anything else. And that is going to end up being the main focus point, or where your eye is going to finish in this scene, because there's barely any color, but there's a person down there in a big red jacket. So definitely color plays a massive part in simplifying your composition and thinking about color when you've got a chance to control it. Definitely, moving, especially with macro and things like that, where you've got a little bit of control over your scene. Obviously, we can't always control the light that Mother Nature gives us when we're shooting wider or shooting, outdoors like that. But when you're shooting macro and you've got a little bit of control over sticking in the scene and things like that, moving those things out of the way that could be considered a distracting element is really important. Okay, it's really important just to think about that, and color is definitely part of that. So, good question. I love these questions. It's awesome. All right, let's have a look what else I've got here. So we'll just do a few more. Again, not too much more to say about this one. We've just got our long exposure here, and that's another way to create a more minimal feel of a photograph. I would imagine that the sea here was quite rough. Okay, it looks like it had a bit of movement in it. So long exposure is another way we can minimize our photographs and just keep it to something simple and raw. And you can see what happens, if he had a shot this at a faster shutter speed and all that water was broken up and rough and textured, it mightn't be as strong photograph as what it is now, or as minimal photograph as what it is now, because now it changes the feeling of the photograph and the mood of the photograph, and the water smooths out and gives it that nice, flat, silky, smooth look, which is creating a more minimal feel to the subject, And not only that, if you've got really big waves, it probably wasn't that big here, but if you do have really big waves along the horizon line and that as well, often that will create, the horizon line will start to look really busy too with big waves. So creating a long exposure like this, even helps things like defining that horizon line. And you can see, we've got a really blue sort of toned image, and I think that's creating that nice feel between, the posts and the long exposure here. So yeah, another way, long exposure, another way to simplify a scene and create a minimal sort of feeling photograph. Yeah, Anyway, I nearly finished my coffee, so hopefully my brain slowly kicking into 100%. All right. I just wanted to throw in a drone photography. And to be honest, I probably would have cropped this square. And I just thought, this is another way, the single isolated subject. And this is what, probably classically we would think as minimal photography, a single isolated subject with negative space. So not too much more really to say about that one. I just thought I'd pull it out as a little drone idea. Oh, this is interesting here. And the reason why I put this one up, and because I don't know who these photographers are, so don't think I'm got anything negative to say about them. It's just what I picked up. So we've got these lovely rolling hills, which I really like. We've got this green and yellows and blues in the sky. And then we've got obviously what could be considered as our main subject. And I wonder what everyone thinks about this tree here. Would you consider that helping the frame? Would you consider that, is it giving depth to the frame? Or is that a distracting element? Is it a distracting element? Because I always look at this and think, is that something that I would have left in the frame is it help telling the story of these? Well, for me, the main subject is definitely these trees, and the supporting elements are this beautiful cloud layer and light and these beautiful rolling green hills. I find that as a distracting element. It's not adding to the scene. Now, would it be different if there was a big tree here and it had lovely big branches and, it was big and epic back there, and then we had some of this side light coming in, shining on it, and it was playing off these, giving the scene more depth? Probably would change this all around. It'd still be a quite minimal photograph because we'd just have, we'd have foreground, we'd have one element, midground element, and then we'd have our background main subject over here. I think that would change this photograph, and that you would leave that in. But the way that is now is a little peak sticking up. I would call that a distracting element. You can see they've done really well with their border patrol. There's definitely nothing around the outside here. Super clean, no distracting elements. But I do feel that this point here isn't adding to the scene, okay? So I probably, honestly, I would have cropped it more. I like these big clouds, but I probably would have cropped it more like this, and the reason being is we've got that on the third there now, and we got less sky, and then, yeah, I just think it would have been a stronger photograph, and also would have done some more dodging and burning, and so there's a bit of, the light is flat-ish across here, but there is a little gap here, brought down the foreground. But yeah, nothing against this photographer. I think it's a lovely, lovely scene. But yeah, you really got to think about the things you include, in your frame. And I think this is where, this assignment with minimal photography is going to be really, really fun to get out and practice and try. So yeah, just thinking about all the different elements in your frame. Okay. All right. So here's another quick one. We've only got a couple more and we'll quickly get through them. I think Terry had another ultimate music list distracting to me. Oh, are you still hearing music, are you? Sorry. I didn't realise the music was playing. Yeah, so sorry if there was music playing. Shouldn't be. Thought I muted it. I can't hear it, so maybe it was the system music. So sorry about that if that's happening. I do apologise. Terry's got another question here. Do you always have to have a subject in the scene to create a minimal photograph? Well, yes, there has to be some story to tell your photograph. So if you're talking about a subject, you always have to have some sort of subject in the frame. I mean, the story's got to tell something, right? I haven't got an example here, but before I've played around with like the sun just about setting, so quite low sun, quite warm light, and gone down to the water, and you'll see the light sparkling off the water, and I've defocused that before and created like interesting abstract patterns. So, while there's no like, while you can't say, oh, that's definitely this or that's definitely that, what you do get, oh yeah, okay, no, that's fine. What you do get is an abstract of the light and reflection. So there's still a subject. So yes, there's always a subject in your frame, but it doesn't have to be something that's clear and obvious. If we do something like in-camera movement, which I haven't got an example here, but if you need some examples of that, I can pop them in the community. But if I do something like in-camera movement, then what you're doing is taking something that's interesting, which is usually light and texture and lines in a frame, say if it's a stand of trees in a forest or something like that, and you're creating that movement, which is adding blur, which again is minimizing minimizing what's in the frame, because it's creating this blurring effect. And it doesn't really have to have a main subject because it's a repeating pattern, or there could be a main tree that's the brightest thing in the scene that your eyes led to that's still blurred out. But if you understand what I mean, there's always some reason. The main subject doesn't have to always be super obvious. Okay, it's not the most obvious thing, but there's always something. It's either light or it's mood, or it can be something as obvious as, say, this mushroom. So this is just another example, shallow depth of field here. Not much really to say about this mushroom, but yeah, I hope that makes sense, Terry. Another one. Another nice photograph, but again, would you consider that these parts of the photograph here, these flowers are really adding to the scene? I don't know if you can see that one. There's one bit behind me there, but to me, I would call these, possibly even that leaf that's half cut off down there, and definitely this, as a distracting element. Now, if we had shot this flower and there was one up here and there was down there and another one up here and another one down there, if we had framed it so that the other flowers were blurred out around here like this, then we might have classed that as framing, because it's more even, it's more balanced in the scene. Okay, so definitely when we've got a single subject, you want to think about what's blurred out, and this is what I mean. You don't understand why repeating patterns are minimal? Yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. That's fine. We'll get to that in a minute. Let me finish this one. But definitely, when you've got things like this and around here and down there, okay, that would be classed as framing. But because we've just really got this and we've got one half sticking in there and half a leaf there, I think the crop for this actually would have been better, something like that, or more of a vertical composition. That's something I would have maybe done. So yeah, for sure. You can see how not always everything in the frame has to be included. Not much more to say, just a lovely moth there. You can see we've really got the basic elements, and you can see how much cleaner this is, that bokeh area. And I think that's really about it. We've got this beautiful bird here as well. But you can see, just those lovely tones in the background. Yeah, so I'll just take a few more questions. I think Terry said, I don't understand why repeating patterns are minimal. Well, to me, and this is, excuse me, I'm just going to mute for a second. Excuse me, I had a frog in my throat. To me, and this is one thing we spoke about in one of our community calls, is that even though we're talking about minimal photography, and your mind jumps straight to, shallow depth of field or single subject with lots of negative space, or that style of photography. And the issue you get when you start to pigeonhole yourself or lock yourself into a genre of photography is you're not allowing yourself to be open and to be creative, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, even though we're doing this photo exercise and it's coming up and we're talking about minimal photography, you don't want to lock yourself into what a minimal photograph is, because the moment you do that, that's what you're going to be looking for the whole time, and you're not going to be able to explore and be creative because you're locking down your creativity to something that's just has to be that. So to me, even this here would be considered minimal. It's what else is in there? How else would you explain a photograph like this? It's just rocks and water and light. It's minimal. So then to me, this is a pattern too, as well, right? So it's filling the frame with something, that's just textured rock into soft water with light on it. It's still a minimal photograph, but it's not locking you down to that single subject with bokeh in the background or negative space, okay? And I think it's really important when we define styles of photography, or we define them, particularly for ourselves, not to limit that creativity to what we've got something that's predetermined in our mind. Because if we do, and we don't stay open to that creativity. I know this is a little bit off topic, but this applies to everything in photography, you know, whether you're planning or scouting or whatever you're doing. But if you start to limit yourself creatively, you know, start to limit yourself by something you've predetermined, then you're not allowing yourself to unlock the maximum amount of creativity that you can put into whatever you're going out to create. Okay, so it's okay to have predetermined and outcomes, but don't be locked into those without exploring other things with your creativity or with your photography. I hope that makes sense. I hope I explained that. So to me, it's just definitely more about being open to what's out there to photograph. So, all right, if there's no other questions, I'm going to post this in the community. And that's really about it. Let me go back to the full cam. I think it's going to bring the music back on, so that's okay. It's probably going to bring my lower third back on. So that's about it. I just thought I'd start to do these more live streams for little bits of topics that come up. And remember, if you're not part of the Three Colors community, it's threecolors.co/join. It is free to join. I'd love to see you in there. Jump in there, say hello, and get to know the other people in there, because we've got a wonderful family of photographers in there sharing their journey together, which is really important, you know, particularly over the last couple of years where we haven't been able to get together. It's been really tough as creative people, you know, so I found having this place that we can share our journey together has really made it easier to keep motivated and to keep inspired, and also have that support through those tough times. All right, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any comments, feedback, questions, share this video with your friends. I appreciate it. They'd be sharing the love around, and we'll talk to you again really, really soon. All right, catch you soon. Bye. I've got to find my outro. It's here somewhere. I'll find it. All right, that's it. Catch you later, guys. Bye.